All right, before we jump in, just a quick heads up, this explainer is purely for educational purposes, okay? It is not financial advice. Okay, so let's get right into it. What exactly is yield farming? Well, at its core, it's all about putting your assets to work across different DeFi protocols, that's decentralized finance, to earn some kind of yield. Now, this yield usually comes from two main places, trading fees and special reward incentives. So, you want to start farming? A really common way to get your feet wet is by providing liquidity to a pool. But what does that actually mean? Let's break it down. It starts like this. You take two different assets and deposit them into what's called a liquidity pool. When you do that, the protocol hands you back a brand new token, an LP token, which stands for liquidity provider. Think of this LP token as your receipt. It's super important because it proves you own a specific slice of that pool. Okay, so your money's in the pool. How do you actually make anything? Well, whenever traders come along and use that pool to swap between the two assets you put in, they have to pay a little fee. And because you're a liquidity provider, you get a cut of those fees. Your earnings are based on how big your share of the pool is. But wait, there's more. Fees are often just one piece of the puzzle. See, a lot of these protocols want to attract as much money as possible to make their pools bigger and better. So what do? They offer extra incentives. This usually comes in the form of reward tokens. A lot of times it's the protocol's own special governance token. Owning it can even give you a vote on the project's future. Just a word of caution, though. The price of these reward tokens can swing wildly. And this is where we need to talk about the big, sneaky risk in yield farming. It's something that catches a ton of people off guard, and it's called impermanent loss. So how does this impermanent loss thing actually work? It all kicks in when the prices of the two assets you deposited start to drift apart. Let's say one of your assets just skyrockets in price while the other one kind of stays put. The pool is designed to automatically rebalance itself to maintain a certain ratio. And because of that rebalancing, you can end up with less of the coin that's doing great and more of the one that isn't. And here's the real kicker. This can mean you would have made more money by just holding on to your original two assets in your wallet. Yeah, even after you count all the fees you earned. This is exactly why you have to think about this in two separate parts. You've got to ask yourself two very different questions. Question one, how much am I actually earning from all the trading fees and those bonus incentive tokens? And question two, how much am I losing, or maybe gaining, just from the price changes of my assets and that whole rebalancing thing? You can't just look at one without the other. So, is there any way to deal with this risk? Well, yeah. One popular strategy is to stick to stable coin pools, like a pool with USDC and DAI. Since both of those are tied to the US dollar, their prices don't really move against each other. That means your impermanent loss is going to be super low. The catch, of course, is that the rewards, the yield, are usually a lot lower too. Then you've got the other extreme. You'll see these pools with crazy, eye-popping APYs. We're talking hundreds or thousands of %. But you have to be really careful with these. A lot of the time, that insane APY isn't from trading fees. Nope. It's almost all coming from those bonus reward tokens we talked about. And if the protocol is just printing tons of these tokens to give away, guess what happens to their price? It can and often does plummet. Okay, so before you jump into any pool, it's a good idea to run through a quick mental checklist. First off, where are the fees coming from? Is there real, actual trading going on? Second, what's the deal with the incentive token? Does it have a real purpose? Third, how much money is already in the pool? And last but not least, if you see a ridiculously high APY, be super suspicious if it only exists because they're printing new tokens like there's no tomorrow. Which kind of brings us to the main takeaway here. Look, yield farming isn't some magical money printer, but it's not necessarily a bad thing either. It can actually be a totally rational thing to do if you do your homework. It only makes sense when the yield is coming from something real and sustainable, and when you've really wrapped your head around all the risks, especially that tricky impermanent loss. So there you have it. Yield farming is a powerful tool for sure, but it's also a pretty complex one. And hey, we're going to keep building on these ideas. In our next explainer, we're going to tackle DeFi lending and get into the nitty-gritty of liquidation mechanics, something you absolutely have to understand in this space. So stay tuned for that.